Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to begin this case with a view. We will be traveling to several locations within the city of Manchester to observe certain areas you will be hearing testimony about. The purpose of the view is to make the testimony you will hear more understandable. If you have the opportunity to look at a scene, the testimony may make more sense to you. Your obligation on the view is to look as carefully as you can and to remember what you see as well as you can. You may not ask questions. You may not take any notes or measurements. You should look carefully at what the lawyers will be pointing out to you. What you see on the view is evidence in this case. Please stay as close together as possible so that you will all be viewing the scene from approximately the same perspective. If you cannot hear or see, please call that to my attention or to the attention of one of our court officers. After the view is completed, you may not revisit the scenes on your own during trial. Also, you may not engage in any discussion among yourselves or with anyone else concerning what you see at the view. As you know, you are not to talk with each other or with anyone else about the case until the end of the trial when you are conducting your deliberations. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, counsel will have the opportunity to make their preview statements to you concerning what they expect you will be seeing on the view. Yes, you may.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ben, and I'm to represent the state on this one. What we're going to do, and first of all, since it's my first opportunity to talk to you as the jury, big J as opposed to the little j, let me thank you again for your time that you're going to be putting forward not only today but throughout the trial. It is very important both to society, to the government, to the citizens, and it is very, very much appreciated. The first part of your job, for the most part, is going to be taking place in this room. The vast majority of it dealing with the witnesses and the exhibits that you see. But as you just heard from Judge Messer, another part is going to be the view. This is evidence, what you're going to see today. It is going to be work on the view. You're going to have to walk around in 2 different locations, and the rest of them will require you to look out the windows of the bus to be able to take into account the neighborhoods that you were in. And I'm going to explain every place that we're going to go in just a moment, and then defense counsel will also have that same opportunity. Together, we are going to see where this happened. You're going to get to see the same places, the same locations in person that you are later on going to see and hear evidence at trial. And you've already heard, again, Judge Messer's instruction. You should consider today's view to be like evidence. In a few minutes, we are going to get on a bus, maybe about an hour, and we're going to see a couple different locations in Manchester. In some ways, it's going to be the beginning of a journey that you will likely never forget. And this is also the last journey that Harmony Montgomery took while she was alive, and where her body went afterwards. It's a journey that's into the actions of the defendant on that day and the days forward. And we're going to drive by places where Harmony was first assaulted, where she was later killed, where she was later consolidated and crushed. And then finally, the different other locations of where the defendant had her in the city. What you are going to see today is part of the evidence. Some of the locations that we're going to drive by, we are just going to pass by in the bus for a minute, and the bus is going to pull over to the side of the road. So you have an opportunity to look at that location and take in the surroundings. And on 2 of the locations, we will physically get out. One will be a parking lot, and the other one will be an intersection. We will not be going into any residences. Later on, you're going to hear testimony about different homes. We may be driving by an apartment complex today, but we will not be going inside in the actual rooms where Harmony was, or where Harmony later was kept. So we will be outside for the 2 times that we get out of the bus. So before we do that, I want to kind of start at the beginning. The first place that we're going to go to, and this is Miss Johnson, forget my art skills, high school. We're going to start at the courthouse. And the first place that we're going to go to is we're going to go down past Elm Street. Definitely not to scale. We're going to come across Merrimack, and we're going to go up here on Market Street. And at that point, we're going to pull the bus over to the side of the road, and you're going to be able to look out, and I would say look out the right-hand side of the bus to the area of 20 Market Street. That's the location of the methadone clinic, where the defendant took Harmony that morning with the rest of the family inside a 2010 gray Chrysler Sebring. When you're there, I want you to be able to take into account just the outside of the building and also look at the neighborhood. I want you to see the number of other businesses that are nearby, the number of other cars that are nearby, the number of the amount of foot traffic that may be there while we're there. You're going to hear in opening arguments that it was at that first location outside the methadone clinic that the defendant came out from getting his medication, got into the car, and understood that Harmony had had an accident, saying words to the effect of, "Really, Harmony, again?"
Objection, Your Honor.
Approach. Ladies and gentlemen, that objection is neither is neither sustained or withheld. The state will clarify. Go ahead.
When we're at that location, later on, you're going to hear testimony that at that location, when Adam came out from getting his medication, you hear testimony that he sensed and smelled that Harmony had happened in the bathroom accident, and that that's where the assaults began of striking. That's why it's important for you to look around, to see what else and who else is there, and to know what that area looks like. From there, we're going to then come back onto Elm Street, probably do a loop around, go north on Elm, then we're going to go up to Webster Street, at the top of Elm, and that's right over where you get past where you go on the bridge, the big Brady Sullivan Tower there. We're going to take Webster Street out, and here, we're going to go out on Daniel Webster Highway. And there's a Burger King. When we get to the Burger King again, we won't be getting out of the bus, but we'll be staying inside, and you'll have a chance to look at that parking lot. What the state is asking you to do is to pay close attention during that drive. How many stoplights roughly are we going through? What are the road conditions like? How long does it take to get there? You're going to hear testimony later on about that same drive. You're going to hear testimony how during that drive, the defendant's assaults continued. And he continued to hit Harmony as they stopped at red lights, as they stopped at stop signs. That's why you need to pay close attention during that drive. And we're going to go out to that location. After we've had a minute or two to sit in the bus there at Burger King, you've had a chance to see the traffic flow, see what the cars are like. At that time, we're then going to turn around. We're going to come back down Webster, continue north on Elm, and then we're going to cut over to an area on West River Drive, approximately 59 West River Drive. And there, we're going to make our first stop where we get out of the buses. 59 West River Drive is one of the street locations for Colonial Village Apartments. It's right up on you can see poorly drawn river. It's right on the backside there. We're going to be pulling in between those buildings and going to a very large back parking lot that's behind there. This is where you'll hear testimony that the defendant lived in his car after they had been evicted from their Guilford Street home, and where the defendant kept Harmony and the rest of his family after they left Burger King, after he continued to hit her, and drove back there to eat his food while Harmony was moaning. You're going to hear testimony that that's where he used his drugs while Harmony died. When you're there, I'm asking you to notice the number of apartment buildings that are nearby. Look at the number of cars that are in the parking lot, how big that parking lot is. I'm also going to ask you to take notice in that back parking lot area, look towards the tree line. Look at the very back row, closest to the river, where different cars can park. Notice all of that while you're there. It's going to be more than 1 or 2 minutes. So you can get out, you can certainly walk around, take your time to really look in that area and look at the different details that are there. Also look up at the side of the building, and I'd like you to note whether or not you see lights on the side of the building that illuminate that parking lot, whether there are street lights that illuminate that parking lot. So do that while you're there. Once we're done, we'll get back on the bus, and we're going to drive back towards the city, back on West River Road, back to Elm, and then south to the intersection with Webster. The buses are going to pull over on the side here, and we're going to get back out yet again. You'll hear testimony that it was here that the defendant's Gray Sebring died, in the intersection. That it was here that where, with his family, the car stopped working, and that it was here, just before he needed to get a tow, you'll hear how he went to the back seat and found that Harmony was no longer alive. I want you to look very closely around that intersection. Look at the traffic going through that intersection, the number of people that were available at that intersection. We're also going to hear the testimony that at that time, when he realized that she was dead, that when you look at the different businesses around, I want you to remember that when later on you're hearing testimony, how his actions was to take Harmony and to stuff her in a duffel bag. You'll also hear later a trial from a tow truck driver, and you'll hear about a gas station on the corner. So while we're in the intersection, and we're not going to be standing in the middle of the intersection, obviously, we're going to be standing on the sidewalk. But while you're there and you can move around, take note of how far away that gas station is and the short distance that the tow truck driver had to bring the car. And once we've spent enough time considering all of these, then we're going to be going to another address. You're going to hear a testimony about a lot of different addresses of where the defendant brought Harmony's body afterwards. We're not going to be going to the first 2 addresses, that one that involves, you'll hear involves a deck, another one that involves a red cooler. We're not going to be here, we're not going to be driving by one on Lake Avenue as well, that you'll hear testimony later on about where he stored Harmony in the ceiling. Where we're going to go is 644 Union Street. So from this intersection, we'll come back onto the buses, onto Webster, come over to Union Street, and head south. And the intersection of 644 Union Street is right at the intersection of Union and Orange. So Orange is the cross street. You're going to see 2 buildings. We're going to be stopping right outside here, 644 Main. Testimony that you will hear later on involves also a parking lot that's general in the back. But here, we're not going to be getting off the buses. You're not going to have to go inside the park. We're going to ask you to again look out the right-hand side of the buses and the size of the building. While you're there, we're going to ask you to please take a look at the number of apartments that are there, the number of neighbors that the defendant would have had based upon looking at those apartments. Look at the traffic, look at the lighting, look at the neighborhood. Later on, you're going to hear more testimony about that apartment and what took place in that apartment. Again, we will not be getting out the buses. You do not have to go in that apartment. When we're done at Union Street, the buses will pull away. We'll come down to Bridge, back onto Elm, back south to Merrimack, and then back to the courthouse. I'm going to ask you to look at one last thing on this drive. As we come back to the intersection of Merrimack Street and Elm, roughly here compared to how I'm pointing right now, down at that intersection, right across the street from each other, there's the Thirsty Moose Tap House, which is right on Merrimack. Right across the street from that is a Chase Bank right now. When we drive back down Elm, and then we take that left-hand turn to come up Merrimack Street to come back to the courthouse, I'm going to ask you to look out the right-hand bus of the window. We're not going to be slowing down there. It's Elm Street, a little too busy. But I do want you to look outside that Chase Bank. In the winter of 2020, you will hear testimony that that was not a bank, that that was the Portland Pie Company, pizza shop, that that was where the defendant worked. And you're going to also hear testimony that that was where, on one occasion, he ordered his wife to bring a CMC bag containing Harmony's body and stored it inside a freezer, seen by other witnesses. So when you hear those witnesses and they talk about Portland Pie Company, we're going to be driving by that location. Again, it's a bank now, it's not a pizza place anymore. But understand where that location is to better understand the testimony that you're going to hear throughout the rest of this. And let me stress again, what you see on this view is going to be evidence. The locations we're stopping at: the Habit Methadone Clinic, the Burger King up on Daniel Webster Highway, coming back to Colonial Village where we'll get out, to the intersection of Elm and Webster where we will also get out, the drive by 644 Union Street, and then back to Elm and the drive by what was Portland Pie Company before we come back to the courthouse. This will be your only opportunity, as you heard from the court, to look at these places in person until the end of this trial. So take your time. If you need more time, please let the court staff know. We will stay longer in the parking lot. We will stay longer at the intersection. We have great deputies and bailiffs who will allow you to be able to explore the space in a safe manner, so that you're not going to feel like you've got traffic right on top of you or anything like that. So do please take your time. But when you listen to the testimony from the different witnesses, these are 5 of the key locations that you're going to hear. So it's important that you know what they look like in person before you hear that testimony. Based upon that, again, after you hear this and after you see all of the evidence of this case, we'll ask you to return a verdict that is just. But I would also ask you if you would please do also pay close attention to defense counsel's comments about the view, because again, the more observations that you can make on today's view, the better it will be for you to understand the testimony you see later on. And it's a one only shot. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good afternoon. This is where the trial really begins for you, and you literally step into it. You step onto the bus, you go to places. These places are exhibits of your mind. These places in your mind you apply to everything else that you hear, see, and consider in this case. The state said that this was the last journey that Harmony made. This is where the dispute starts. This is not the journey that Harmony made, but this will be the journey that we make today. And when we leave here and we go to Merrimack Street, that's a clinic. And it is a clinic that you'll hear testimony that Adam and Kayla frequented all the time, or quite a bit. And that when you're there, I want you to look. We can't recreate what was happening on particular days or particular weeks, who might have been coming and going at what time. So you actually can only look around and see the exposure. What is the parking there? What can you see? What is exposed? What is hidden? And then apply the evidence that you hear about events that may have occurred there, and consider, could this have happened? Put your mind to the testimony and apply it. This is what I saw, this is what I remember, this is what the witness is saying. It is your evidence, but it's evidence in the case. Then you'll go from the clinic to Burger King. And at Burger King, that's really very, very important to look at that entire layout. Again, we can't recreate the amount of traffic that was on a particular day or a week. We can't recreate any of that stuff. But you look at the parking. I want you specifically to look at how that drive-through works out when you make the order and then you pay the cashier and then you get your food. Take that into consideration. Take the time to think about a route through the drive-through. What is exposed, what is hidden, who can see what, from what angle. Think about the cashier. Think about all of the stuff around the drive-through. And actually, when you're there and stop, think about that from the time somebody pulls into the parking area. And again, you will be applying that to somebody else's testimony, and then you'll be thinking and applying that. Does this work? Does this not work? What's going on here? It is your evidence. From there, you heard that we're going to Colonial Village, and that is a place that you're getting out. So you will take the time. Traffic's going to be different from testimony that you hear about, but you want to look. What is exposed? What is hidden? From particular places, looking at the building, what can you see? What can't you see? We're going to direct you to particular places and areas and say, take a look and consider from this perspective something that pictures can never quite do. Then you got to hold it in your mind and again apply it to testimony as it comes in. This is an exhibit throughout the trial, not just for this afternoon. From the Colonial, you will go to Elm and Webster, which is a place that you're going to get out, and that is really critical on traffic because, again, it can't be recreated, but there is going to be testimony about traffic, about reaction to traffic. There's a car that's broken down there, and about what people did about the car, about what traffic was like because the car was broken down. And you want to, again, look, what's exposed, what is hidden, and apply your exhibit in your head to the testimony that comes here at trial. Then, Fit Shelter is the next place, and you're going to hear about information that happened inside Fit Shelter. So you won't have that sort of same perspective of what's exposed and what's not exposed because you won't actually see that part. And there's testimony about Fit Shelter that is very disturbing, but you still need to go there so that you put it in place about the type of place that it is. And
Objection? I'm sorry, I think there's an objection.
Essentially withdrawn.
messing up my words, Union Avenue. Sorry. You will not be going into Union Avenue, but some very disturbing things occurred at Union Avenue, so you want to hold this into your head. Think about the building, think about the location. Remember Union Avenue, even though you can't go into it, and I think you'll be very happy that you don't go into it. All of this is an exhibit inside of your head, and keep the names a little bit better than I did. I'm so sorry about that. But the location is the same, and this is the journey that we are taking. And at the end from Union Avenue, you're going to come back here, and as they say, pass by the corner at Merrimack and Elm. Keep that in mind. I also want you to keep in mind the distance from the two. Distance in this case is a little bit less important, but still something to keep in mind as a person testifies about traveling from place to place, about how long does it take, the traffic lights, what is a delay. And I did forget, at each of those traffic lights, I want you to look around again, just as you're going through the traffic lights, what's exposed, what is hidden. You're going to be on streets. Assume that everything on the street is exposed. Look around on the sidewalks and the areas around it as well. It's a difficult thing. Again, you're not taking notes. And you're going to have to remember this as you apply it to all of the testimony in this case. All of these locations are important, not necessarily for the reasons that the state said. There is a dispute going on here, but there is no dispute that all these locations are very, very important. And we can only ask you to pay attention as best you can. When we get there, we'll just remind you of perspective and specific areas to look at. I believe that we'll be going behind you to make sure that the bus stops long enough for you to absorb all of the areas before you go to the next one, until you step out and actually walk around, starting at Colonial Village. Thank you.